Welcome, everyone, to my show, the Health, Happiness, and Planet podcast. In today's episode, we are going to focus more on the area of energy and happiness. I have the pleasure of having this amazing guest who currently lives in London, England. She founded her own company called Julia Kai Limited. Her name is Julia Kai, who is a multi-passionate person. She is a life skills teacher. She does systemic counseling for individuals and families, is an educator of the Imago Relationship Theory, is a UK athletics coach with advanced mental training, and a certified healer by the National Federation of Spiritual Healing, and is a lifetime runner and writer. In 1986, she completed a marathon in just 2 hours and 36 minutes. To this day, she is an adventurer, traveler, and enjoys connecting with Mother Earth by spending time grounding. A few years ago, she had an amazing initiative to run barefoot across Spain to raise money for charity. She works at the core level, helping people live with greater awareness, success, fulfillment, creativity, and happiness by clearing inner tensions that were caused by specific life events. Julia has the gift for seeing people's energy and guiding them through the areas where they are stuck so that their energy flows freely, allowing them to live life to the fullest and to be present in every moment. This fully aligns with my intention for this podcast episode, where I would like you to find alternative ways to boost your happiness factor. Julia and I spoke about the definition of happiness, some root causes of why people have a hard time finding happiness, and what are some of her recommended solutions. We also spoke about the definition of a Bodhisattva. We had some connectivity issues in this episode. Sorry for that, but we still hope you will enjoy the amazing content. I'm thrilled to introduce you to this amazing guest, Julia Kai. Welcome, Julia, for the episode from our Health, Happiness, and Planet podcast. Thank you very much for taking the time of being our guest.
Thank you. It's such a delight. I'm so happy to be here, Juan. Thank you.
Yeah, we've been in contact for such a long time, and we've always covered such interesting topics. And I remember even my wife and I, we were also in your podcast a while ago. The topics that we cover is, I think, going to be very interesting for the people listening to this podcast. And therefore, my first question to you is, what are you passionate about? And how did you actually get to know about this passion that you have? Because I think you are a multi-passionate kind of person. Yeah, you like so many things in life, and that's what is so vibrant and so exciting about your personality. And therefore, I'm very interested, and also I'm sure that the audience is interested to know about your passion and how you got there.
I think that my absolute passion is the human condition, is people. And that, I think, from a very young age, I've been on what could loosely be termed a spiritual path from when I was about 8 years old. So I would say at the core of everything was that awareness that we are human beings, but we're on a spiritual journey. And I had that awareness from when I was about 8. I come from a very Christian family, and we would go to church a lot. And I'm not a practicing Christian now, but it was a beginning for me of an awareness of our true nature. And I was very fortunate in that the church I went to was very expansive. It encouraged your own thought, your own investigation. It encouraged looking into the Bible in a way, in an allegorical and a parable way. And it was all about our own journey here. So from a very young age, the root of it was the church, and I belonged to a junior church missionary society, which was fabulous. We met on Fridays and investigated, and we used to sing all songs to the guitar, happy clappy songs, and it was a lovely environment, and it was very expansive. It wasn't limiting. Yeah. And then for my own ongoing investigation, I just was fascinated by the human condition. And from about 10, 11, 12, I started to read voraciously. And I read everything I could get my hands on. I read a lot of the big sort of English big novels, Thomas Hardy and Jane Austen, and those kind of books that delve into the human condition in a very subtle way. And I was always interested. And my dad was very much a poet person. He loved poetry, and he would read poems to us. And I remember when I was 8 years old, again, 8 was a very significant time for me, because it was the time I had an understanding in a sermon in church where the vicar was talking about our responsibility of how we create the light in the world is clearing the dark from within us. And I also remember I was 8 years old, and Mrs. Mack, I remember her at school, our English teacher, she read us great big epic, I wouldn't really say it's a poem, it's a very long kind of bit of prose by Matthew Arnold, and it's called Sohrab and Rustum, or it might be Rustum and Sohrab. Anyway, and it moved me to tears. And I was 8 years old, and it's a very big story about a father and a son and how they're apart because the mother didn't want the son to go to battle, and how they end up in battle together. And I remember being moved to tears at that age. So I kept investigating the human condition. Alongside this, I wanted to run. And I knew that from 6, 7, 8 years old. So my own journey of transcendence was through the running path, where I was seeking always to run faster, right from 8 years old, and I still am. And I've got faster, slower, and I still love trying to run fast because it takes me on an inner journey. So my running step was always, right from the beginning, part of this journey of investigation, and it was a place of investigation for myself. My own relationships with people was a place of investigation. And then from a very young age, people started seeking me for guidance, basically, from when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
It's a very long answer.
Wow.
So I hope that.
Yeah, that's quite amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's really very curious for me always to listen how specific people are always drawn to certain topics, yeah, and with which topics you resonate. Yeah, and from your side, when you were very young, yeah, like 8, 9, 10, you already resonated very strong with these topics and with spirituality and of course with your running, that you were able to go deeper into all the things you were just telling us right now, which is amazing. Yeah, because most people, I think, even when they're adults, they're still trying to figure out what is it that they're passionate about and what is it that they are drawn towards. So it takes sometimes for some people a while to figure that out. But in your case, it was really from a very early age.
And I had great guidance, because I will say that Dave Eaton, who was this curate at the church, in the Christian church, there was a vicar, then a curate. And so he was the kind of second in command. And he was only in his 20s. And I was 13 when I really was investigating. And he would lead these Bible studies, but he'd let us explore. He wouldn't be telling us. So I went through a phase when I was 15 where I was really trapped in my head because my mum was ill and dying. When I look back, I can see the kind of scene. At the time, I didn't understand it. But I was stuck in my head with a lot of guilt. I had this terrible guilt and I didn't know how to free myself. And I went and talked to Dave, and he showed me the transactional analysis model, which is parent, child, and adult. And he was saying that I had a very harsh inner critic and a harsh inner voice that was telling me, I was bad and wrong. And he helped me see that I could free myself from it. And he taught me how to clear these guilty feelings and thoughts. And he taught me that at 15, which of course is the basis of a lot of my work. And then when I was 16, my mother's great friend, Joyce, she obviously saw in me the seeker, and she gave me the book Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach. And it was about a seagull that's, finding freedom, and it's a kind of an allegory. And I remember when I was 17 and went to my sixth form college, and my name was Julia Armstrong then. So I was in the first set, the A's, and they were looking for somebody to do the assembly. And no one put their hand up, so Julia obviously did. Yes, I'll do it. And so I read to this new school I was in, 800 people. I read a section of Jonathan Livingston Seagull where he says, your body is nothing more than thought itself in a form you can see. Break the chains of your thought and you break the chains of your body too. And I read all this out very bravely when I look back to this whole school of 800 people. So it was in my being from the beginning.
Yeah, that is very, very interesting. Yes, I, for example, only got to know about these topics when I was probably just in my 30s, more or less, when I started reading more about these things, because I was always very much into business. But then later on, I was thinking, well, but there's a little bit more than business that I can learn about being in this world, in this fantastic world. Well, I'm finding out all the things that you are saying right now, and that's why it's so inspiring for me to hear this from someone who has been doing it for such a long time. And as you're working also with people to help them find their happiness, what would you say is the patterns or the things that happen the most, why people are unhappy today? What are are the things you have seen from your clients and from the people you have supported?
I think essentially they don't love themselves. I mean, that's the simplest answer. I mean, there's two ways we can look at this. There can be the way that depends on people's beliefs, and I'm not, I recognize that everybody has different ways of seeing the world, but it can be that there is a thought, of course, that we come in with stuff to work out because, we've been round and round, and planet Earth is a great space and a great learning ground where we can work our stuff out. So we could come in with it, and then the parents and all the circumstances of our life then will bring up the stuff we need to work with. But if we're just doing from a psychological perspective, little children, but with the best intentions in the world of the parents, who are often hurt themselves, not resolved themselves, still working things out. And they might produce, 1, 2, 3, 4 children, all very different humans who come into the world. And of course, they can't meet every child's need. And even basic things like a mother might have 2 little ones and then and a new baby, and then one of the little ones just doesn't get the attention they need at a certain time. So what can happen is that a little child can start to internalize that they're not loved, that they're not wanted, that they're not heard, that they're not okay in some way. And that isn't necessarily, as I say, the fault of the parents. Of course it's not, because parents are doing their best. And ultimately, as people go through life, even if they've had very, very difficult times in their childhood, ultimately people need, of course, to be able to heal themselves. So so therefore, I'm not saying that people often don't have terrible times in their childhood, but that even if there has been a place where there has been obvious hurt and abuse and neglect, even with those sort of situations where people have lost the feeling that they're okay, that they've got any worth, they've lost love of self, they've lost any self-esteem, even in those extreme situations, there's still a need ultimately for us to heal ourselves. So I don't know if I've answered your question. I think people just lose a connection to who they truly are. They lose that sense of their real essence. They lose connection with themselves, and they often aren't properly in love with themselves, essentially.
Yeah, and there's a lot of limiting beliefs that is being ingrained, and that they're always in that same pattern, yeah, and always thinking, oh, I'm not a good writer, or I'm not good at this, or I could never do that, because they just somehow had that already ingrained since they were small, maybe, yeah, and that's something.
Yeah, I think what happens is little children haven't got a self-concept. They come in all kind of fresh, but as I said, or maybe they come in already with the thing to work out, and very quickly they'll interpret somebody not really paying much attention to them when they're trying to draw a picture or when they're trying to write. And at certain stages in childhood development, if a child doesn't get enough attention when they're, getting competencies, or where they're exploring their feelings, they can internalize, as you say, all manner of, they'll have a feeling. It's the feeling and the belief at the same time. So they'll feel upset, but they'll have a narrative that, as you said, will be, I'm not good enough, I'm not listened to, I'm not good at that. And of course, what then happens is the pattern repeats and repeats and repeats. They'll have that similar feeling, and they'll see through the filter of that pain. And another child may not have the same response to a teacher telling them off or telling them their maths isn't good enough, to the child that's internalized they're not okay.
Yeah. And how would you define the word happiness? Is this the same definition for everybody, or what would be your best definition to seeing a happy person who can say, I'm happy with my life?
I think there's a good Buddhist saying that goes, there is no path to happiness. Happiness is the path. And I think essentially that if people are looking for happiness outside, often the very thing that they grab at or they think will make them happy, whether that's a relationship, a job, a house, success, or whatever it is that they're seeking on the outside, often the very thing that they are trying to attain then often can be the thing that brings them more unhappiness. So they'll think that that person's the perfect person to marry or have a relationship with, and then the problems start to arise, or, oh, that job, I know it's all I've ever wanted, and then it doesn't work out. So I think that it's more about recognizing that it's more of an inner journey to connecting to who you truly are, because again, that looking outside to, I want status, I want success, I want, money, whatever it might be, fame,
Yeah.
then thinking that will allow you to do what you want to do and then you'll be happy is probably, it's in reverse of that. So it's to be, do this, I would say do some inner work. I'd say that everybody could benefit with a little bit, doesn't have to be great in-depth work, but some investigation to their
Yeah.
beliefs and their paradigm and to where they got the ideas they did and what resonates for them, and to go deeper into where there is some hurt and unresolvedness. Because then the more we're able to connect to who we truly are and connect a place of ease and acceptance. And I think that really, in answer to your question, to be happy is to have an absolute acceptance of where we are now and to recognize if there is development that's needed, either in terms of healing or in terms of developing just as a new skill, anything we might want. It's about going into a place of ease within. And of course, that
Yeah.
the simplest way to do that is to learn how to be absolutely in the present moment and absolutely here and now. Because if we're absolutely present and we will then be able to experience presence, go into the area of our essence, our pure potential, our unmanifest, the faceless, formless place before we've got all these identifications that perhaps aren't serving us. But this all takes some practice, of course. But if we're here and now, then the body, if we, the breath, I often work a lot with breath work with people. With the breath, we can come back into the center of our being. The body can't be anywhere but here and now, whereas the mind can be regretting the past, frightened of the future. The more we're able to learn how to be present, the more then we're able to work with any areas of hurt, pain, unresolvedness, and know where we need to go. And then actually, we're not looking at the thing we want to do to make us happy. We're coming from a place of ease and joy anyway. And then we're doing our passions, our
That
work.
summarizes pretty well. Yeah, especially when I think about people who have been very successful, or if you see those celebrities who have a big house, big yacht, big car, and everybody who's looking at this and sees those photographs, they think, oh, that's the ideal life. That is what happiness is all about. But then when you see all of the cases, how many celebrities actually suffer with depression or have problems with alcohol or drugs, then it really puts one to think, is that really then happiness? Yeah, because they probably just realize, now that I have the car and the house and the fame, I'm still sitting here alone and have internal problems with myself that it's not being resolved. And then they find out, okay, this is not what I was looking for. This is not the solution to my happiness. And I was going to say that it's very interesting, but also very scary for some people to find that out. Yeah, only just later in their life, when they say, oh, I was looking for something and working so hard to get something, but at the end it was not what I was really looking for. Just as an example, and in my case, I was always seeking to get higher and higher in the corporate ladder. And every time I got a higher position, I thought, okay, now I'm going to be super happy because I'll have a better salary, I'll have more responsibilities and so forth. And I was happy, but I always thought there could be more happiness. And then I got to the next level and I thought, okay, I'm happy about it, but I think there could be more. And like this, I was always progressing until someday I thought, well, actually, there is more than just the corporate life. And that's where I started going into this direction for health, happiness, and planet, to find really what am I passionate about and what really fires me up. Because this one side of going up the ladder in the corporate world, this was very exciting, the whole journey. It fired me up as well, but not as much as other topics, the topics from health, happiness, and planet. So that's why I made that transition. Yeah. So that's why it's very interesting what you were saying right now, because it just confirms all the things that I've already somehow went through in the past as well.
Yeah, I did the journey with my running. As a young child, I ran free. I was always trying to run fast, and I've always been a competitor. I love competing, but I was a free competitor, and I just ran for the joy of it. And then I did a whole circle where I lost that joy, and I started seeking results and seeking some sort of immortality through running results. And of course, I knew deep in my soul that couldn't bring me happiness, but I got caught in a trap where my mind got kind of keen on the idea of fast running. And I had to work my way back. My running was my nemesis and my salvation, really, because when I got caught in the mental seeking something for a running time, but then it also brought me back to step and let the running flow through me. And that's why it's joyous for me to still be running and to just still love competing in races, love training, but with a presence, which is what I had as a child.
Yeah. Wow. So the next question is very interesting for me as well, because I'm sure that the listeners, if they're still new into this whole realm of what is spirituality and what does it all encompass, many times we come across the words like the energy and feelings and emotions. From your definition, are they different things, energy, feelings, and emotions, or are they all connected, or are they the same? What would you say to that?
I'd say everything's energy. So first and foremost, I would say that, this whole universe is energy. And I think Nikola Tesla said, if you want to know about the universe, think in terms of energy, vibration, and resonance. So everything is energy. And if we could see our bodies, they'd all be just little atoms, moving.
Correct.
Well, we can see our bodies, but if we could see more. In terms of emotions and feelings, I would say that emotion, again, other people may define this differently, but I would say that emotions are things that have got caught up. They're made by the brain. And so we've had a feeling in the body. The body just will have a feeling. So something will come in the feeling, it's not come in the body. But as you said, people get beliefs, they have narrative, they have all sorts of layers and layers and layers of different narratives about a certain feeling that then can create an emotion, which can be, rise up when people feel reactive to things. So there's the old brain, which is the prehistoric brain, which when we react to something, either with feeling angry, upset, irritated, jealous, or even overexcited, over kind of stimulated, then what's happening is the old brain saying, kind of giving us a bit of a warning, because it's got a memory of something that happened in the past when we were small, which we might have internalized, again, as we said, that we're not being listened to. So if somebody cuts us off, even if it's someone in a shop or a friend, we might feel a reaction in the stomach, for instance, but then the emotion that comes out will be the brain going, I'm being ignored, I'm not worthy, I'm not valuable. And then people can, if they act out of that and get upset and, have an argument with the person or withdraw from the person or whatever thing that happens, they reenact the whole thing. So that gets stuck. The feeling in the body, if we just have the feeling of a rising of a feeling, then that's just the feeling. And if we don't have the narrative and we don't act out of it, we can clear it out of the body. And ultimately, we can actually shift all of these reactive patterns. And feelings just rise in our body. It's our brain that interprets them. And that would be my definition. I'm not sure people may have a different idea, of course.
No, it makes quite a lot of sense. Yeah, especially that, as you say, that the feelings is what you interpret things. Because, for example, I was once in a workshop and there was a train track next to this workshop location. And every time the trainer was giving the workshop content, and I would say every 20 minutes, 30 minutes, there was a train that was going by, and there was then this little sound. It was going ding, 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 and the train would just blast by. So people were just like rolling their eyes, say, oh, not again this sound, no, not again this train going by. So the trainer said, hey guys and girls, let's now reprogram ourselves, and let's say every time we hear that bell go off, that the train is coming, we're all going to stand up, we're going to do a happy dance, and we're going to give each other a massage on the back of our shoulders. And let's do this as of now. So every time this bell would ring, everybody would jump up, they would dance a little bit, they would give a massage to the person next to them, and then suddenly they were starting to reprogram themselves, and now they're already looking forward to the bell sounding from the train, and they're already reprogrammed the way how they interpret that in order to have happy feelings. So the trainer, it was such an amazing experience, because I've seen how that trainer managed to change people's feelings on the way how they then perceived a certain outside reaction. Yeah, and that was so amazing.
Yeah, very good. That's very good.
Yeah. And the other question that I have is, when you have a client who you who you know, that because the first questions that I asked was, what is the main root cause of being unhappy? So you said, okay, one of them is maybe not loving yourself, and all the other topics that you were covering. And what would be your advice to them? What is like one of the first things that you would say, I would recommend you to change this in your life, or I'd recommend you to change these kind of thought patterns? So what would be your first approach?
There's two things here really, because my experience of working one-on-one, and essentially I've done lots and lots of one-on-one work, and lots of couple work, and obviously I have worked in groups and done talks, so it would be slightly different what I might say in a talk to when I'm one-on-one with somebody. So because when I'm one-on-one with somebody, sometimes they need to be in the victim place for a while, and they need some space to cry and just be heard, and just literally be given the permission to feel the feelings they have, and also given the permission to say the things they need to say that they can't do anywhere else. So there is sometimes a process where I think that I would always do little intervention, but I'm very sensitive to, I was told by somebody who modelled me for their PhD years ago, probably 30 years ago now, they were doing a PhD in social construction, and they did lots and lots of videoing me working and interviewing me and all sorts of things. And they said that my greatest gift was, or one of my gifts, I don't know if it's my greatest, but was being able to see and feel at almost the same moment, which meant I never went ahead of the client, where they were at. So I don't have a set thing I'm going to do. I wait and see. When somebody turns up and shows up, I respond to where they are. But of course, my job is to help them get going in life again. So I've worked with anything from, such tragedy of somebody, having a baby die, or a 12-year-old killed in a road traffic accident, things that are unthinkable for people to work with, and a lot of death. I've worked with a lot of grief. Or people losing everything, their business, their marriage, their money, the whole lot, or, anything, sudden shocks. So ultimately, they have come to me because they want to live again. But it's pacing it so that they can have the space to grieve. And, our society's not necessarily allows that space. So, but it is about helping them take the steps. So I haven't answered you at all, because it would be so different with every different person as to how
every situation
start to help them. Just shift the emotional set point. So it might be just, sometimes it might literally just be if somebody's heart's hurting, which often is the case, I might just say, put your hand on your heart and do the chakra chanting sounds. And so the sound for the heart is ah. And so I'll get them to just get that vibration going through their heart chakra. And it's something they can do to help ease the pain. Or simple mantras, like, if people have terribly low self-esteem, a very key mantra is to be able to, when they're starting to go down the route of a narrative that's really unhelpful, and they're feeling terribly upset in their body, it's like press pause, hand on the solar plexus, because that's often where pain is. Breathe deeply in, get back into the body, because the body can't be anywhere but here and now. And then even just saying, I am where I am, it's okay. And if they can't say it's okay, because sometimes it doesn't feel okay in the midst of a divorce or a redundancy or a grieving, but even just to be able to say, I am where I am, and come into the present moment. If they can say it's okay, then it brings them to a space of I'm here, I'm alive, I'm here, I'm now, it's okay. And also the I am who I am, and it's enough. That, because if they're feeling awful about themselves, just those phrases can be so helpful. And if they get used to saying them throughout the day, sometimes obviously the little child within them is vulnerable and hurt. So I'll suggest that they start just saying to the little person, look, I'll look after you, I'll never leave you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I'll never leave you, I'll look after you. And then they can do it in the third person too. You're safe, you're loved, you're looked after. So those simple little phrases, I'll probably start very early on with somebody to just see if they can practice a few tiny things like that. And often, obviously, doing things like being able to go out for a walk, being able to change the state of where they are, being able, to go and do something with a friend, but not talk about their issue, because sometimes all that does is re-imprint it. So I would, if I were giving a talk, then I'll come up with all sorts of these ideas, but then people can cherry pick it for their situation. If I'm one-on-one with somebody, I'm very sensitive to where they are. And then what can happen is over a period of time, I get very tough. So I have a client, I can just think of one at the moment who I've been working with for a year, and I was very gentle with her, very gentle, very gentle. And now I'm very tough. And she loves it. She says to me, be strict with me. Be strict with me. And I'm very, direct, and because when she starts to go into her pattern, but yeah, so if you saw me working with one person, you'd think, oh dear, poor woman.
Yeah, so you really adapt to the situation of each person and what they are more perceptive and receptive about. Yeah. And
yes.
And you don't do it all at
and when
once.
they're ready.
Yeah, when they're ready.
No, and when they're ready, because they hear different things. So even with a client recently, I said a tiny thing, just a little suggestion, but she was ready, but it's been many, many weeks of work. She was ready, but she still reacted, and she heard something different, but it was fine. So she had a big reaction and cried and felt that she was a terrible person. But she was safe with me because I had said a little suggestion, and she tapes our sessions, so it was perfect. I say tapes, that shows my she records our sessions. So when she listened back, she said, oh, isn't that fascinating? I heard something else. Then it's a big shift, and they're available for a big shift. If it's in a therapeutic situation, what can happen out in the world, of course, is when people hear something else, it just re-imprints the pain around it goes. So that's why the therapeutic setting can be so valuable. If the person can react with the therapist, then they're safe.
That's amazing. Yes, it has so much to do about communication on the person sending the communication and the person receiving the communication. Because as you say, if these people are in a meeting at work, or if they're having dinner with their family and their manager is maybe communicating something, and maybe in the family meeting, the husband or the brother is saying something, and they might perceive the message totally different to all the other people who are sitting there, and they might see it as that they were targeted by this message. One sees it as a different color as the others, and that's so amazing that you as a person giving the communication needs to have that empathy and this feeling to know, am I really sending out the information so that everybody more or less gets the same kind of message? And it's sometimes it's not that easy, and especially if you don't have that superpower, like the superpower I called when you have that empathy, when you have empathy with others. And I think that is one of the things that if somebody's missing that part of empathy, then it's sometimes hard to be a good communicator, because then you do not know, how do I regulate my messages? And are the people really getting me, or are they seem lost? So maybe I explain it in a different way so that they really get it, and I can see their faces, and I can feel the emotions in the room, that they're feeling now happier and calmer. So that's why I think in your job, you must have that superpower of being fully empathic, and really feeling what the others are feeling and knowing how far you can push them.
Yeah, I think there's lots of things there. I mean, how we say things is always integral to what we're saying. So that's absolutely what you were saying. And I think that awareness is really useful in life, the empathic way of being. But it's also recognizing that there are times where the person will react anyway because of their particular hurt. And I think everybody doing a bit of inner work would be transformative. But if you're the person doing the inner work, then there's a double responsibility, as you were saying, because we're responsible for our own reactivity so that we are here and now and we're not reacting to things, but we're also responsible for communicating in the most, the kindest way we can. And I used to find group work not as comfortable, because I used to work corporately in the 90s and I did one-on-ones, but I worked with a manager who did the teams. And so I did do group work with him on occasions, and he wasn't as empathic. He said to me, I should close some gates, because I used to finish the days and I had seen so much going on in the groups that you couldn't work with because it was a group setting. And he was a great trainer. He was wonderful, but he wasn't going to worry too much about everybody's, because he had to communicate what he was communicating. I would be seeing it all. And I was only at that point in my 30s, and I used to finish the days exhausted because I'd see all these people reacting or not misunderstanding or getting upset or subtly. And then we'd finish the day and we'd have dinner together, and he'd say, you need to close some gates. And I said, no, I'm never going to close any gates because this is my superpower. But I didn't enjoy it as much, and I will still do occasional group things, but I don't enjoy it as much. I don't mind speaking because that's a different thing. You're communicating a thing, people can take what they like. But an actual group work, I always found less, for my particular way of being in the world, I found it less enjoyable.
Yeah, I think that's where I was struggling a little bit in the beginning when I started in the corporate world, because at some point of time I did some kind of analysis and I scored pretty high in the emotional intelligence part. So I had a very high empathy, and that made me understand why I felt sometimes so bad when I was in meetings with other people, because I was feeling what they were all feeling. And if there were 3 out of 5 who were feeling miserable, then I was really affected about that. And my energy levels would be really low after that meeting. So I was always trying to work with myself, saying, how can I manage that? How can I then still acknowledge what is happening in the room, how they are feeling, but not have it affect me and lower my own energy? And later I was able to somehow use it as an advantage, so that when I was leading the meetings, I would really see it as a third person, as a perspective, looking from the top, like the helicopter view, and just seeing the situation and then reacting towards saying, maybe I can ask this person a few other questions on how they understood what I just said, or maybe I could repeat it in a certain way, until I start feeling that people are feeling a bit more relaxed. Now they're feeling more comfortable. And then I know, okay, now I did my job. Now we can end the meeting. I think everybody's fine with what we just agreed upon, and not just close the meeting and say, okay, here's the message, I'm closing it. Now everybody get back to work, without even knowing if people even accepted or understood what you said. So that is something very important.
I agree. As 30 years on from those years, it's a different experience for me in a group. So similarly to you, I can still see it all going on, but rather than being completely second position, you've got the third position. And you can just wait a little bit and watch and see what's happening, and it's lovely to have developed a bit, and so that it isn't exhausting to be in a group. It's still not my preferred place. I think my preferred place is working with a very small few people, or one-on-one, or speaking. However, if somebody asks me to do a group, I mean, I can do it in a different way to in my 30s. I don't end the day exhausted. As you said, it's a developed different skill. You'd have the helicopter
correct
thing going on. It's good.
That's right. And that's why I think now that you have been doing this for so many years, because I would think, how do you manage being such a happy person and with so much energy, but dealing with clients who have so many things to optimize and so many bad experiences that might have happened in their life, or the loss that they had, but you are still able to live your life happily and full of energy without getting drained into this, I would say, same energy level. And that's something that's quite amazing, that you're able to manage that. Was that easy for you from always?
I've always been number one. My number one priority was my own clearing work. And it was really important I was a clear channel. And when I was in my 30s, one of my clients died. And he died very suddenly, over a period of just a few weeks. But his wife, she wanted to go to a medium. So I found somebody for her. But this medium had a spirit guide talk through her. So she would go into a trance, and then the spirit guide talked through. Anyway, the spirit guide came through her and said to me, "Oh, you've brought a wonderful energy into the room," and didn't talk anything about my life. She was very supportive. For the woman whose husband had died, it was a very different kind of reading. For me, she just said, "You're here to help and heal. You'll work with dying people. You'll always work. There'll always be a stream to your door. But we counsel you, Julia, that things of the spirit happen in their own time. There's no rush." I was about 34 at the time. There's no rush. And that the most important work you do is you clean your own mirror, you clean your own, field. Yeah, not your mirror, your own field, so that you're a clear mirror for others to see themselves. And that's essentially it. So I really knew that all I needed to do was my own inner work. That was the essence and the core of my work with people,
Yeah.
which meant that therefore clearing. And there was always this channel, whatever chaos might be going on in my own life, because I was obviously living my own life and stuff was going on and things and stuff and everything. And, but I remember when I was about 30, around this time, all around my early 30s, I was on a radio show for the whole afternoon. I was the guest that he talked to between playing songs. And a woman who was in a wheelchair, who was rheumatoid arthritis, she was in her 50s, she was very ravaged by the disease. She heard me on the radio and she went, that woman can help me.
Wow.
So she hunted me down through the radio station and got me to work with her. And we worked to her death, which was probably about 8 years later from that. And she said to me, you do know your channel, don't you? And I said, as she said it, I went, yes, I do know that the wisdom, the guidance channels through me, which meant that even though there was often chaos at that point in my own life, because there was this me working all the time on the clearing work and my own journey, when I was in front of somebody, it channeled through. And she said to me, she used to have a body like mine because I was very athletic, but 32-year-old. And she said, it's interesting that I've chosen you to help me process and come to terms with my own loss of my body when I've got in front of me what I used to have. But so yes, I think that I'm good at clearing, and increasingly so as the years go by. I've always had a fun-loving nature. I've always been completely, someone who will lark about, as my mother would say, and was always the person who was leading everybody at school into naughtiness and fun. So that's part of my nature, and I can leave things behind. So I can be with a lot of, very difficult stuff, and it doesn't mean I don't care at all. I care deeply, but I can leave it and I can be present and come out and play, basically.
Wow. That is also a superpower. Yeah. And I think, I don't know if I'm right, but there's certain souls that for me, I perceive them as they have a specific age. Like, for example, when I think my soul is about an age of 32, 34, around that area, because when I was younger, when I was a kid growing up, and when I was a teenager, I didn't feel like a teenager. And when I was a child, I didn't feel like a child. I always felt like I was somebody more mature, that I was somebody in my 30s. And when I was in my 20s, I still thought that I was more mature than that. And then when I got to my 30s, I'm like, oh, wow, I feel like I am totally in the zone. That is now who I am. And now I'm going closer to my 50s and I still feel like if I'm 30. So I think even though when I'm going to be 80, 90 someday, hopefully, I'm still going to talk and speak and be like a 30-year-old. Yeah, because that's how I feel my soul is. And I think in your case, you probably maybe like in your 20s, in your 18, 19, your soul. And even though you will be then much, much older from today, you will still be like that child, like that soul.
I think so. I think I'm about 19.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember when I was running with my friend Jim when I was living in Eastbourne, and so I would have been then in my 40s. And we would run together and talk. We were training for an ultra marathon. So we spent at one point 9 hours together a week because we were training for this 100K. And he said to me, Ju, it's like running with a 30-year-old bloke. So I was very fit. But being with the wisdom of a 90-year-old. But then I think the larking about bit of me is about 19, yes. And I feel very ageless. And I have a lot of young clients. I mean, my age range of clients is actually probably 25. They're probably the youngest, and the oldest is 87. So there is a range. But I would say there's a lot of 30s, 40s.
Yeah.
A lot of that kind of age.
Yeah, it's so interesting because sometimes I meet people and they're young, but I'm thinking, wow, I feel like if I just spoke with a person who is like in his, I don't know, 50 or maybe 60, even though that person was a teenager, or vice versa. Yeah, so that is very, very interesting. Yes, and that's why I think every time we speak, I always feel so energized. Like if I would be speaking with somebody at the university or something. Yeah? So every time we finish speaking, it's like, oh, I feel so much energy. I could go now work out. I could go for a run or swim.
Yes, exactly. exactly. It's fun. I love speaking
Yeah.
with you.
And what I also have seen in your career and in your life is that you have been to many countries and you like traveling a lot. And which place has inspired you a lot?
That's an interesting question. I think it's probably the other way around that I get inspired to go to places.
Oh,
So I just, pick. I mean, a lot of my travel has been with my running. So I was running for my country through the 80s and 90s. So I would go to places because I was invited to go and run there. And every place had held some magic and memories and fun and every place. I do remember actually one of my most inspirational places was, and I'm not going to be able to remember the name of it. It was in Germany.
yeah.
It was a little town, and I met Zatopek, the runner, and
Wow.
it was Nuremberg.
No,
That is
yeah,
Germany, isn't it?
that's correct. Yes.
Good. And I had a magical time there
Hmm.
partly because I met Emil Zatopek,
Yeah.
who was a runner in the 60s, I think. But he was an awesome runner, won Olympic gold medals, 5,000, 10,000 marathon. But it wasn't so much his results, although, of course, they were awesome and they're part of it. He was such a humanitarian and he was such a soul person.
Yeah.
And and he inspired me because that all resonated with my own running journey. So I would say that was an incredible trip. And I was inspired but that of course is a person, but it just happened to be in this space. And I remember the town. I absolutely love the UK. I mean, I've travelled far afield and I've always come home
Yeah.
and I love this country. I love it so much. I love its variety. I love the city of London where I live
Yeah.
now. And I've visited so many amazing cities that I absolutely
Mhm.
love. I love Barcelona. I love Madrid. I love Spain.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, we know this. And I love Bangkok, interestingly. And I've been to incredible cities,
Mhm.
but I love London. So I think it's more that I've always been on an inner journey. My cousin lives in Madrid and
Mhm.
he's married to a Spanish woman. So he seems like he's Spanish. And
Mhm.
he said to me when I've traveled, I was a digital nomad for 6 years.
Mhm.
He said, I've always thought of you as an inner journeyer rather than an outer journeyer. And I said, yes, but my inner journeying has been the thing that led me. So that's what led me to be a digital nomad.
Yeah.
And then I would follow wherever we felt to go. So I think, and at one point I was a roving race reporter for a running magazine. So every month for about 18 months, I went to a different city then generally and ran a race in it. And I found that every single experience, there was something magical, a person, the feel of the plaza where I'd sit in it. I'm not really a sightseer. I'm more a person who sits in the space of the land and loves the energy of it and recognizes that the energy will be some reflection of me
Yeah.
because everything in this whole life that we're living is a reflection of us. So therefore, if we're the center stage person in our own life, there'll have been something that drew us to that place.
Correct.
And I just think that but at the moment, I'm about to do a bit more traveling, but at the moment, I've been very UK based and loved it. I've loved being back here, except that it's a bit colder.
Yeah.
And I did say to my husband and Nadia recently, I think that's the last January I'm going to do in the UK.
Yeah. Oh wow. And it's yeah, it tends to be also a little bit more wet than other countries, yeah, or cities, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, and
it does.
yeah, but that's really very, very interesting the way you replied to that question because it made me realize that depending on how you perceive or how you look at the world, you can find either great things from every single place you go in the world, or if you're going with a negative emotion and you're going with anger, then you would come across things that will get you mad from those locations. But if you go with a mentality of openness and happiness and joyfulness, you will come across happy situations in those places.
Also, yeah, also, I think if we go from the perspective, it's something resonant with us. So if there is something where there's some energetic, something comes up, because I had the experience we were in Thailand and we went to PP Island, and I hadn't realized that PP Island was where it had been hit by the tsunami in
Mhm.
2004, I think it was, wasn't it? And
Yeah.
but I didn't know, because I'm not someone who looks at disaster
Mhm.
footage. I
Yeah.
don't see the value in it. I think I recognize and can hold in my heart the pain of obviously lots of human beings in those situations, but I would never look at the footage. So I didn't know that PP Island had been hit by the tsunami. Anyway, we went down the first day. We were up in this beautiful, beautiful place looking out over beauty and delight, and it was just so glorious. Then we went down to a bar, and we sat in this bar, and I said to Anadi, "Oh, really bad things have happened here."
Wow.
I said, "I can just feel this place." And then we discovered that the bar owner had lost 14 family members in the tsunami, and all of the seats we were sitting on were in memory of them. And then as we were there, I was overcome by a lot of grief. Now, I took that as unresolved grief in me. So, of course, there were humans there who were still grieving in a big way. And lots of the people we'd ask them how long they'd been in PP Island, and they'd always put it with, 10 years before tsunami or 2 years after tsunami. They had it as part of their narrative. And I felt very sad when I was there for quite some days. And I said to Anadi, this is where I haven't healed some of my own griefs in my life. Because he was all right. He said it had a strange energy, but he was all right. And it had a party energy, and it had to be places where you went with a post, showed where the water had come up to. But I took it as a space to heal my own grief and any that was unresolved still in my body from my own losses in my life. And then I decided I would watch some footage. And I watched the footage of the tsunami while I was there. And I was struck by a man standing on the beach. Everybody was running, and the people filming obviously were safe. But there was a man standing on the beach, and he wasn't going to be able to survive. And he just accepted his death, and he just stood there with his hands on his hips, and he waited. And I was very struck by that. Wow. And then I got super ill. I got super Thai ill, both everything you can imagine when you get ill in Thailand. So after about 2 or 3 days of this, Anadi, I went online and I saw him booking us into a hotel in Phuket and going to a doctor. But it was so I think that was an incredible process for me. And that was it. It was to do with me. And there was some clearing out, there was some healing, but it was quite a big, intense process.
That's amazing. Yeah. Now, for the other topics that I'm going to ask you, but it's a little bit related to what we just mentioned, as you also are quite often barefoot, do you actually also feel more the energy when you're barefoot? What's the advantages that you have seen when you are barefoot? Do you also feel more the energy of certain places you go to, or is it more the feeling of freedom, or what is it, the motivation from your side?
I think I've always been barefoot right from a child. I was born in West Africa, so I was bare everything for about 4 years. Occasionally you might have a nappy on, I think, when I was tiny. But I was a very naked child. And then we came back to the UK when I was about 4. And I was always, if I could be, I mean, obviously the UK I was in my little shoes a lot, but we had a lovely garden, and I would just be barefoot. And I remember once our cousins lived a mile or two away in another home, and I was with my boy cousin Christo, and we ran from his house to mine, and I had no shoes on, and it was very natural for me. And then when I was 15, I joined my athletics club, and it had a grass running track, so I did all my running on the grass track with bare feet. So I think of myself as a barefoot being. I remember crying, which wasn't very sportsmanlike of me, I have to say, because I was at school and it was a grass track and it was a race and it was a house competition and everybody was wearing spikes, and they made me put spikes on.
Oh my God.
And I cried, and I remember feeling embarrassed that I cried because I couldn't run as well in the spikes, because I'd been brought up that you've got to be well behaved in these things, but I was very upset. However, I did adjust the spikes and I adjusted shoes because I became a very good runner and I needed shoes. And obviously I wore shoes in, wherever I went to school and things. So I think in my soul, I've always been barefoot, and therefore I just love the freedom of it. I love the feeling, my feet like it. But I'm quite happy to wear shoes as well. I mean, I wear in London at the moment, I'm wearing Vibram 5 fingers because
it's quite cold. And
it's very cold.
When it's cold and wet, it's not so nice either.
So I love running in my bare feet. I also, though, will wear shoes. And recently, because I've been super keen again on training for a marathon, which I haven't run and trained for a marathon for 12 years, I'm quite happy to wear super shoes to race, but I'll wander around in my bare feet. When there's lovely beaches, I'll run in my bare feet. So I'm not identified with being barefoot, if that makes sense. I love it, but I'm also love running. And if a pair of shoes are helping me run, I wear them. Yeah, but once the nicer weather comes, I'll take my Vibrams off and wander around the streets again in my bare feet. I'm quite happy in London in bare feet. I don't mind having dirty feet. It's fun.
Yeah. And one feels like a child again. Yeah, if you can still be barefoot, even though one is a grown up, then you just get those happy feelings from being a kid. Yeah, and as you know, but I do not know if my listeners know, that my wife and I, we have also been barefoot since the last 4 years, and we have crossed all of Spain, and we have done clocked in over 10,000 kilometers that we have done barefoot.
Wow.
And it is really amazing experience, because we just started it as an experiment. We noted down all of the experiences that we have had going through this project, and we noticed better energy, better sleep, better, I would say, the less pain in your body. I was even able to feel like the different energy from different locations, and all of that is just amazing. And I think you can. It's hard to describe if you don't really have tried it. Yeah. So.
And you have lots of conversations with people.
Yeah.
People have conversations with me in my. Just to let your listeners know, Vibram 5 fingers are very just 5. All your toes have a little home. Correct. And they're very thin shoes. Yeah, and they're fabulous. But lots of people have a chat with me about them, let alone in bare feet. And bare feet, everybody likes having a chat.
That's right. And that we have noticed here as well, because people, when they look, it's more out of curiosity. And then we have those conversations with them because they're just curious. They ask questions. And then we just had such a nice conversation. And we're thinking, wow, if I would have been just the normal Joe going around with my shoes on, I wouldn't have had all these great conversations with the people.
Yeah, very good.
And well, so the last question I have for today, because our time is almost up, and it's super, super interesting. I'm sure we could go on for another hour, but for today, the time is almost up. You have also a podcast which is called Conversation with a Bodhisattva. And maybe could you just explain to us, I don't think everybody knows that term, Bodhisattva, and what is it, and what is it that you do in this podcast?
Well, a bodhisattva it's a Buddhist term, and I'm not actually a Buddhist, but because I'm not an anything, I'm just, I think all religions all lead back to the same point, that the Creator, God, love, what consciousness is within us. We are consciousness. We are the infinite intelligence that created us. So I think all religions actually at their core lead back to that and say that we are. The kingdom of heaven is within us. We are all that is. We are the creators. So, but the bodhisattva, I like the definition of a bodhisattva. There are a few definitions, but one which kind of fits probably my journey in life is that it's somebody who is able to uplift and inspire and make other people smile. That's a simple kind of definition. A bodhisattva is somebody, another way of putting it is somebody who's on the path to awakening. Another definition is somebody who is more evolved, who is helping other souls evolve. Those are the sort of definitions. I think the simple one, which just goes rather than talking about, because people don't necessarily want to talk about awakening or evolution or being evolved, all of those things. Some people do. But I think the definition that kind of really just says it's somebody who has the capacity and the compassion for other people that enables other people to feel better and to smile. And when I was 14 years old and I failed all my exams because I'd larked about in my year, actually I hadn't failed all of them, 6 out of 12. And I was a bit worried about this. And Polly, my friend, said to me, don't worry, it doesn't matter that you failed your exams, because she said, you'll always be all right in life because you make people feel better. And so essentially that's what a bodhisattva is. They've got the energy within them to help other people feel better. And the podcast is just essentially for people to have an arena where they can talk about something that's been significant in their lives, very important to them, that led them to reflect and to grow and transform.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the basis of what the podcast is. And it
Fabulous.
was wonderful interviewing you and Monica.
Yeah, thank you very much. And well, as I think you've also done your deed as a bodhisattva for today, because I was definitely smiling very often in this podcast for today, and I'm sure that the listeners also hopefully had some chances to smile at the things that we were discussing today. So thanks a lot, Julia. And before we close the session, where can we find you?
Yes, I am on Instagram. I'm Julia Kai _. And on Facebook, I'm Julia Kai Taylor. And then my podcasts are obviously all over the place, Spotify and all that. But I do have a website called, I can't remember what my website's called.
I'll put it on the show notes.
Bodhisattva Diaries or Diary of a Bodhisattva, one or the other. And then I have my website, which is for my work in people's lives, which is juliakaitaylor.com.
Perfect. I'll put it all on the show notes so the listeners can just go there and click on it. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Julia, for your time today, for being a guest in this show, Health, Happiness, and Planet. And I'm looking forward to seeing you soon again.
Thank you. I've loved every moment. I've so enjoyed it.
Same here.
Thank you. Lovely.
That's it for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. There were quite a few topics discussed on this show. Do not worry if you do not take notes or if you are not 100% sure what are the actionable steps to take. In the show notes, you will find a link to a downloadable cheat sheet with a simple action plan. You can choose the action points that fit best to your current situation, and then you can later make an assessment if it made a difference. Feel free to let me know how it went. Your feedback is important for my team and I, so we can continuously improve the value we provide you, as we want to give you the most out of each episode. Please rate, subscribe, send your comments, and share with those family members and friends whom you think would enjoy this episode. This is greatly appreciated, and I am grateful to hear from you. I am also a work in progress, and I strive to do things better each day. Thank you, take care of yourself, and see you soon in the next episode. Big hugs, everyone.